It has its problems. I once described, and I think I probably still would describe, the United Nations as an indispensable mess. And it's an institution that frustrates us all. And anybody who has walked through the halls of the United Nations gets a sense of what I mean. But it is also an absolutely indispensable organization. And if you look at the problems that you and I are concerned about, I mentioned one of them, nuclear proliferation, immigration, HIV, AIDS, economic development, trade. You go down all of these problems, and what strikes you is we can't solve any of them. We cannot solve a single one of those problems by ourselves. We're as smart as we are, as rich as we are, we can't do it. We got to have help. The question then becomes, how do you get that help? One way you get that help is working through international organizations. That has its frustrations. Believe you me, working in the United Nations has its frustrations. But it's very important that we try to do it. One of the great things that American foreign policy accomplished after World War II was that we asserted the American national interest in a way which we engaged and supported the national interests of a lot of other countries as well. And we put together a lot of the institutions that characterize the post-World War II period, including the United Nations, including not the WTO, but the WTO is a successor to some of the organizations, the World Bank, the IMF, NATO, many other multilateral organizations. That was a period of great flowering and even genius in American diplomacy. We have to get back to that, and we have to recognize the importance of international institutions to achieve the American national interest. We don't join international institutions just for the heck of it. We join international institutions in order to advance the American national interest, and that's the way to do it, rather than to do it unilaterally. We've had a good bit of experience in recent years with unilateral approaches, and I am mildly encouraged that we are now coming back to a more multilateral point of view, and I hope we are.
I would just add, and I agree completely with what Lee said, and I would say to Joshua that I think that it's not only what we do, but it's the attitude we take as we do it. And my concern has been that we've been too arrogant in our foreign policy and too unilateral, not nearly as willing to reach out. I also think the due process matters, and we send incredible messages if we're willing to short-circuit the due process, whether it's Abu Ghraib or Guantanamo. And I think we have to be very, very careful about the messages we send, first by the attitude, and secondly by our willingness to cut corners when it comes to things as important as due process.
Tom, let me interject another comment. The first visit the President made after he was elected to the second term was to Latin America. He met with a group of presidents of Latin America. Went down there, sat around a big table with all of the other presidents and said, look, folks, we got a big problem. Big problem is terrorism. We need your help. The other presidents all nodded their head and said, yes, sir, Mr. President. We know you got a big problem. We know a lot about terrorism. We'll help you out. The President said, thank you very much, came home. Who was the next visitor to that group? President Hu. What did President Hu do? He sat down at the same table and he said this: I want to help you on economic development, which was their interest. You see what I mean? We must be sensitive to the agenda of other nations. Are we right to be concerned about terrorism? Of course we are. Is it a big problem for us? You bet it is. Should we have it on the agenda? Yes, indeed. But it ought not to be the only item on the agenda. We have to be sensitive to other countries' interests, and our diplomacy has to reflect that.
Thank you, Lee. Question right here.
Hello, I'm Erin Ferris. I'm a prospective student for Georgetown's Public Policy Institute, and I was also a student at Drew University when Tom Kean was president there. So it was a privilege to attend one of the 9/11 hearings, and the bipartisan leadership and the success of the compilation of the 9/11 Commission's report was tremendous. And I was hoping that you could speak to the future that you visualize for bipartisan leadership in national crisis and national disasters, because it seems to be something that you were able to do so successfully, and it will probably be needed again in the future.
Well, thank you for your question. I think one of the things that impressed all of us on the commission was how important it was to the country that we were able to come together. 5 Republicans and 5 Democrats, all of us kind of washed up politicians in a way, had very strong views, liberals, conservatives, moderates, and people were impressed that we were able to come together with public policy recommendations on very controversial topics. How did it happen? Well, let me tell you, building a consensus is the toughest part of politics. I think it's very easy to walk into a room and blow it apart. I know because I've done it a few times. Anybody can do it. Anybody. That is not political skill. I can go in and give a speech anytime to any place, anywhere, and get that crowd riled up and anger. All you do then is make it more difficult to solve the problem. How do you reach consensus? Well, when you find out, you let me know, would you? There's only one way I know, only one way. There may be other ways, I just know one, and that's to talk. And to talk. And to talk. I can remember driving home at 3 o'clock in the morning one day after we'd spent 18 hours, I think maybe 15 hours talking. Totally discouraged. And I said, we're never going to get together. And fortunately, we had a very patient leader, Tom Kean. Not Lee Hamilton, Tom Kean. I'm not that patient. And Tom held us together, and we reached an agreement. So consensus building is tough. I often think about this. I was in 34 elections. I had every question put to me that any constituent can ever remember or think of. I cannot remember a single question about my ability to build consensus. And it is the most important quality needed in political life today. Can this person build consensus? Now, look, I'm not naive. Democrats are Democrats, Republicans are Republicans. They hold their positions strongly. They should. I shouldn't fall out of my chair if somebody disagrees with me. I shouldn't get angry at them. I shouldn't blow my top. But this has to be done patiently and deliberately, and all I know to do is to try to talk it through. Now, one secret here is to try to get an agreement on the facts. It is amazing how much time we spend in this city arguing about facts. Facts are facts. They're not Republican. They're not Democrat. Facts are facts. So it became a joke for Tom and me. We'd turn to the staff and say, okay, what are the facts? We must have asked that question 1,000 times. And the staff would groan every time we'd say it. But if you can agree on the facts, it doesn't necessarily mean you agree on the solutions, but it makes it easier to agree on the solutions. Now, one other thing, Congress. Congress has an enormously difficult problem here because, for well, a lot of reasons, but I'll just mention one. We were focused on a single problem. What do you do about 9/11? The Congress is faced with dozens and dozens of problems. And the problems come at them with such rapidity and in such complexity, they simply do not have the time to develop consensus. Now, let me make one further comment. They don't work hard enough either. Congress does not work hard enough at legislating. You have to take time. in the House. Tom, I'll choose the House because it's sensitive to the Senate. Look at the House schedule.